you keep going up the ladder ring by ring, and you're like, I just kind of feel like the higher I go, the more isolated I feel. And as younger versions of, especially as men, we have this vision of what success is.
Right.
And a lot of times that version, we don't spend the time defining what success looks like to us. We just adopt kind of what society says, and, titles and achievements and accomplishments and, money in our bank account and all those things, accumulation. And I get towards the higher end of that ladder, and I look around, Sean, and I'm like, dude, I think I'm on the wrong ladder. Like, this is not what I thought. It's not what I want.
All right, welcome everybody back to the Sean Trace Show. I am your host, Sean Trace, and I have an awesome guest with me today. Would you like to tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do, man?
Yeah, Kyle Depiesse is my name. Most people see that last name and they're like, what is that? So it's French Luxembourg, and I always say the fastest way to say it is break it in two parts. Dep, yes, and you got it. So that's who I am. I am a husband. I am a father. I'm an entrepreneur. And I run a lifestyle brand called Guys Trip.
That's awesome, man. Talk to me a little bit about that. What is Guys Trip all about?
Sure. Yeah, so I've got, there's a few different versions of this. I'll give you the short one. We can break it down however you want. But I've got a background in corporate America, climbing the corporate ladder, as I'm sure many listeners are familiar with. And you keep going up the ladder ring by ring, and you're like, I just kind of feel like the higher I go, the more isolated I feel. And as younger versions of, especially as men, we have this vision of what success is.
Right.
And a lot of times that version, we don't spend the time defining what success looks like to us. We just adopt kind of what society says, and, titles and achievements and accomplishments and, money in our bank account and all those things, accumulation. And I get towards the higher end of that ladder, and I look around, Sean, and I'm like, dude, I think I'm on the wrong ladder. Like, this is not what I thought. It's not what I want. And that was about 10 years ago. And so I like to say I retired from corporate America. And I love to uncover the process of learning for people. And so I swung the pendulum all the way to the other side, and I became a high school business teacher.
That's rad, by the way.
Man, I love it, dude. Like, teaching. So I taught high school business, like accounting 1 and 2, entrepreneurship, marketing, personal finance, economics, and careers. And I really enjoyed it. It was such a fulfilling time. I taught for 2 years. My wife and I had our son, Cal, in 2017 in March. And so we're coming up on him being almost 9. And my wife did her 3-month paternity leave. I finished out the school year, and that timing just worked out perfectly. And we said, I was driving 65 miles one way to teach. And as you know, teachers don't really get financially rewarded that well. And so we decided that I would take the promotion to a stay-at-home dad. And it was a really sweet time. And as a young kid, our son, like all young kids, they're infants, they sleep a lot. So I got the gift of being home with my son. And I had this gift of just a blank piece of paper and a white space. And I could say, what do I want to create in this world?
Yeah.
And I went back to my time in corporate America. I'd go to all the leadership conferences, all the seminars. I sought out all the personal growth stuff. And you're probably familiar with this, Sean. Like, you're sitting in a Marriott hotel conference room, 4 concrete walls, and there's hundreds of thousands of people with lanyards and name tags. And you're like, oh, I'm an introvert, man. This is so overwhelming for me. And so I found myself, I'd sit in the back. You and I probably would find each other at these events. Like, we'd sit in the back, and I'd leave. I'd just go out the exit, and I'd be like, okay, like, can I surf here? Can I hike here? Can I go golf? Like, what's the adventure? That's what I want. And I found out, I'm like, I'm not the only one doing this. There's a lot of misfits that are out here, and they learn differently. And so I'd learn more just finding people like that and having real conversations. And so I thought to myself, could I just switch this whole learning environment and flip it on its head. And so in 2019, I went out on LinkedIn where you and I connected, and I said, I'm going to create this 2-night really unique experience on the North Shore of Minnesota. It's along Lake Superior. And it's going to be like a personal growth type thing, but there's no speakers, really light on agenda, and we're just going to have great conversation and have some fun. Sean, all guys showed up to that first event in 2019, and I didn't market it to be guys only. But what became obvious to me is that guys don't really have this space where they could show up unedited, and they didn't have to present. They didn't have to, be this version of themselves that everyone wants them to be. They could just be a dude. And we had a great time. And so I was like, I guess I'll just keep doing this. And it turned into the Brand Guys trip. And now I'll finish up here.
No.
We've been all over the U.S. We've been international. We haven't made it to Southeast Asia. It's quite a long flight from the States.
It's a long flight.
But yeah, and we're just having a lot of fun. Guys are coming in and they find it a breath of fresh air. Most guys that attend this are successful professionally. They're really tight on time. And so we pack a great experience into a short bit of time, and guys will go back home steadier and more alive and more present in their everyday life. Yeah, that's kind of what Guys Trip is.
That's awesome, man. I had a very similar experience to you. Like, my wife is a famous singer, and when our daughter was born, I was also faced with this, we were looking at, well, who's going to be here with her more often? And I became a stay-at-home dad, and I started up my media company because I wanted to build something as well. And one of the things that I built especially around the same time, was that we built my daughter's YouTube channel, Ilani's Little World, which is an educational content for kids, because I just was like,
Sweet.
It was just this purpose time where I was like, I was staying at home. I had been an educator before. I was a kids teacher for many years. And I went back and did my MBA. So that's why I was like, teaching high school kids about business is awesome. But you're right, it's not so well rewarded financially, And I built my own business as well. But like, one of the things that I have found is that as I've built my business now, I've got 20 people that work for my company, like 20 contractors, but they lean on me. Like, I am carrying all this weight. And, and it's like it is not easy for many men. And and I'm not like a big CEO, super high, but I'm, a small business owner who's trying to build a team. And, but I'm carrying a lot. So I can only imagine the weight that other dudes are carrying. And like, the idea of like getting away and finding purpose, I'm wearing a cape tonight because I ordered it for an event my wife was supposed to go to. And like, the dress code was like an over the shoulder cape. And I told my wife, I was like, well, dude, if I get a chance to wear a cape, I'm wearing a cape. So I got a full on cape on today. And I was just like, oh yeah. And so she's like, look, Sean, you need to stay home. You're not going to go well at this event. I'm like, I'm going to role play in some stuff, man. But like, the idea is like, why I bring up the cape was because men especially used to go on these adventures, like quests, and like the quest was what you would do and it brought you meaning. And I'm not talking like conquering or things like that. I'm talking like there were tribes where when you became an adult, both men and women would have to go through a rite of passage. It was a journey that you had, I remember it was a great episode. What was it? Wild Boys with Steve-O and the other guy and Chris Pontius back in the day. And they went to the place in South America where in South America, in Brazil, they would wear this glove with bullet ants. And like, the kids would go on this journey and then they would put this glove on full of bullet ants. And like, you can go online and watch these clips, man, of these people doing it. And my point being is like, there used to be these things that we would do that gave you purpose, that gave you meaning. And now we just sit adrift. And social media is not helping. I mean, this is all going to go up on social media, and I'm thankful for it as an outlet. And I try to be a voice in that chaos of stability and reason. But like, if you see what people think they're supposed to be like, today the Grammys came out, and I saw an artist on TV that was just like a guy that was just like, doing these faces and stuff, and he was like, and I was sitting there thinking, I was like, is this what he thinks it means to be masculine? Like to just make these faces, to have your shirt half hanging open and flex. Like, we have
Mhm.
to talk to people about like just understanding, like, I don't care what you believe about all this stuff, but if you can find a way to instill meaning, instill
Mhm.
purpose. And for me, I've
Yeah.
always found that when I travel, there is that perspective gained on my own life.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I live in Southeast Asia right now. And when I drive down the street, what seems normal to me, to other people's is wild and adventurous. And then when people travel from here, they go to other places and they say, oh, things are wild. But it gives you that perspective. And from that perspective, you can start to understand your place in this world. And it's like, and I think like, I'm going to summarize because I want to get back to you. But I remember once I was deep into all of this drama that I was dealing with when I was living in LA. And then I was like, I needed to get out of here. So I flew up to my mom's house. And as I was taking off out of LAX, we banked right. And I looked down and I saw in Culver City where my house is at, I saw the street my house was on, and it was so small. It was so tiny. And when I was above
Mhm.
it all, I mean, this is like the Stoic practice of, view from above. You get above it and your problems shift. When you are stepped back from something, you get this perspective. But I want to ask you about this too, because what was the moment you realized success wasn't the same thing as fulfillment? Like, not the highlight reel, the quiet moment when something fell off,
We have the gift of looking back on it now.
right?
And I think sometimes in the moment, we don't see it because we're in it. But, I think I would put it this way. I think there's a moment when maybe we realize that success can keep us busy enough to not notice like the pieces that are missing. Like, until all those things just come rushing in and they kind of catch up with us, we don't see it. Like, I don't think I was burned out. I don't think I was depressed. I think like a lot of good men, they don't feel that way. Like, they don't feel lost, but what they feel is the heaviness of responsibility. And a lot of times we don't notice until that just comes rushing in and catches up with us. For me, I was in my last role in corporate America was in e-com, slinging video games. And which is funny because I don't play video games, but that's where I found myself as I continue to climb up this corporate ladder. And I remember going into work on Thanksgiving Day. I think it was 2013. My brother was visiting with his wife. They were from, I think they were in Seattle at the time. We were in Minneapolis, and my folks visited from Southeast Wisconsin. So they're all here to celebrate Thanksgiving, Sean. And I go into work at like probably 4 a.m, some just crazy hour because I thought I had to be there. I thought that people needed to see me, the first one in, the last one out, just grinding away. And I had this moment where all my family's visiting me from out of town on Thanksgiving on a holiday, and I'm not even there. And I just thought to myself, what am I doing? And that's the moment where like all these things that I kept putting off and this version of success as we keep our head down and we keep grinding away, we don't realize it until we can get a moment to step back. And for me, that was that Thanksgiving Day, just sitting there at work thinking, what's this all for? And so I think that was, if there's a moment, that was the moment. But really, the truth is that, when we're busy chasing success, we don't really see it until it catches up with us.
There is, I had a busy day today, like really, really busy. My team crushed it today. We had a bunch of videos. We had a bunch of challenging videos that we worked through. We got a lot done. We had some increasing our scale and looking at ways to do things. But then, like, there was a certain point in time where at, what was it? 4 p.m., I packed everything up, took my daughter to the eye doctor because we had stuff that we had to do. Like, and priority was there. And come on over here, Annie. right now, sitting in the room with me. She's sitting right here, and she's just sitting here while I do my podcast. Just say hi. You can say hi, world. And she's just
Hey.
chilling and doing her thing while I do my podcast. Because even though I'm doing my podcast, like what's really important to me is sitting right over there, And there'll be little moments where I look over and we joke around about some things. And her mom's traveling tonight, and we always, whenever I have podcasts, like, and her mom travels, she camps out with me. Like, it's perspective. And for me too, like you can go, but if you can't figure that out, and I think that there is an injustice that happens to many people in their lives that they don't figure out what that thing is. What is that thing that lights you up? And it doesn't, for me, it was my wife and daughter and family and meaning. That brought me meaning. And like, I love teaching. That's why I do podcasts, because, dude, I love teaching. And if I can teach people on a grander scale and use podcasting as a platform to make this world a better place, so be it, man. So be it. Because there's more to the world than just being a cog. And I mean, dude, if you like being a cog, and I'm not judging that, and then you go fishing on the weekends and like that's what brings you purpose, like, dude, that's awesome. But for me, that wasn't it. And I would say that for other people, it's probably not it as well. But like, I wanted to ask you this because, I want to, in our conversation, if there's someone listening who's sitting there going, yeah, dude, that's me. How do I make that shift? Like, you walked away from a fast track corporate path. What were you, first of all, most afraid of losing? And what did you actually gain by making that shift?
This will be an interesting conversation to have with you because you're currently outside of the United States. But when you're in the US and you first meet someone, a social setting, whatever it might be, what do you think? 80 to 90% of the time, the first question usually is, what do you do for work? And so, I had left, probably more of a sexier title, and I traded it for a high school business teacher. And then I traded it for a stay-at-home dad. And so for me, I think what I was afraid of was probably, I think what I would say as legitimacy. I was a bit afraid of what would people think of me when I say, I was in corporate America doing all these great things, and now I'm just a high school teacher, or I'm just a stay-at-home dad. So I think I was afraid of losing legitimacy in the eyes of other people, the titles and the upward story, the upward mobility, and probably the safety of being able to say, like, hey, this makes sense to other people. But what I think I gained instead was what I would refer to as alignment. And, I like to think that I got my nervous system back a little bit. I gained some time that maybe didn't feel like it was someone else's, or time that was borrowed. And I gained the ability to look at my life and say, like, this is actually mine. Like, this is my life. And it wasn't easy. That took quite a bit of time to wrap my head around and put my ego and my pride aside. But it was honest. And I think that level of honesty in alignment just gave me some new energy.
I love that, because there's so much there, and getting that new energy is a big deal. And finding out what it is for you that can give you that energy is powerful. For me, the thing that I was really afraid of was this is a similar thing. Like, there was this status thing. My dad was heading on track to become a vice president at a university. He was in education. And then he was going up, and he had this career hiccup where it wasn't working out at one school. He was looking at moving to another school. But then all of a sudden he realized, like, he stepped back, he had a health crisis. And on the other side of the health crisis, he got better, but he realized, he's like, I want to be helping people stay healthy. And so he started teaching people about wellness, and he went back to massage school, became certified at massage, and he started running a massage school. And like, that glitz and glamour of being a VP at a education institution wasn't there, but yet he was running a massage school. He was on the state board for massage in South Dakota, and like, he was like genuinely happy. And because there was purpose in what he was doing. And every time that his students graduated, like when he was working for universities, he was like, I don't know if there's real value to these people and like what we're doing, because he's like, people are getting student loans, but like with the massage school, he's like, every student who leaves here goes out and helps someone. I know that they're going to help someone feel better. And it was powerful for him because he had to give up a lot of those preconceived ideas of success. But what he was realizing was that he wasn't fine. And a lot of men say they're fine, but they're carrying weight. I know I've got a ton of weight. I went yesterday. One of the things that I do is like my wife and I, we get regular body work, like go to a spa and like I just sit there while this tiny little person crawls on my back, steps on me and breaks and cracks everything that needs to be cracked.
Yeah.
And then I come home and I go, wow, for like a couple hours, I drop some of that weight. But like, not everyone can do that, and everyone has that option. Like, what does that weight usually look like when you start to see it up close? What is that? Because for me, it was physical stress. What is it like for other people?
This way of living always has a price to pay, and it comes due at some point, and it usually is accumulating interest when it's due. Here's a great example, Sean. I was just 2 weeks ago, I was in Coronado off of San Diego, and I had a guys trip meetup there. We had, I think we had 12 guys there. 2 of them have had strokes. One is 36 years old, and the other had it when he was 47. And we don't notice it until it kind of blows up. So what does it look like? You ask, Sean. Like, I think it looks very quiet. Here's how you can notice it, I think, at home. Like, it shows up as shorter patience. It shows up as kind of crowding out our sense of curiosity. And I think our family can see it in what I call like this low grade irritation that we just can't quite name. We're irritable. And we're short on our fuse and we're short on our temper. We snap easily. I don't think it's one big problem. I just think it's like, that saying, death by 1,000 cuts or death by 100 cuts. It's all these
100%.
little pins and pricks that kind of go after us. We have the expectations of ourselves, the expectations of others. We make these big decisions where, man, a lot of people are depending on the decisions that we make. We carry other people's emotions, other people's responsibilities, and we've got no place to put it all. You've got an outlet. I think that's great. Most men struggle with finding an outlet that's healthy. And if we don't choose a healthy outlet, life chooses one for us. And those usually aren't healthy outlets. They look like really bad things for men, and that's where we start to blow up our lives. I think it's the combination of isolation and pride that is really taking a lot of men out. But you see it, our family sees it. It's just this low-grade irritation that we carry. It's usually how others can notice it in us.
I think so. And it's so true. Like you don't see what's building up. For me, there's a couple like non-conditionals in my life. Number one is 3 times a week Muay Thai. Like getting into the gym, hitting that punching bag, and just unloading and feeling so much less stressed. And if I don't do that, then it starts building up in a bad way. Mm-hmm. But
it's a pressure release valve.
100%. It is. It's like that, and that steam blows off. Yep. But not everyone has that. And it's one of the things too. Like we see, I'm blown away by seeing in the news people, especially men, that have done some really, really awful things lately. And, mm-hmm. and one of the things that I'm sitting there going is like, I don't think that we teach men how to let go correctly. Mm-hmm. And then people start going down some paths because they start surrounding themselves by people that are letting their stress out the wrong way, yep. and then people model that, and it's like, one of the things that I think of is just like, because there aren't these, and I'm going to use this word in a different way, safe spaces for men to go be men. It's like we can't get into a place where we yep. are being around other men and we can be like, what, I can be in this place and I can just let go. And, and it's like one of the big things, as I've gotten older, I love my wife, I love my family, but man, I don't have many friendships like I used to, mm-hmm. And I think that there's a lot of people, a lot of men that struggle, and women as well, that struggle to build real friendships as adults. And one of the lies that we tell ourselves is that we're just too busy. Like, what do you think we can do to start building these connections? And why do you think that we struggle to make these friendships?
So I think friendships as adults, especially for men, I'll speak for men, but I think the same is true for women. Adult friendships require vulnerability. Like, I'm talking about having friendships that are talking more than just sports, fantasy football, the weather, all those things. It requires vulnerability. And as men, especially, we optimize towards things that show up on, they're measurable, the scoreboard, KPIs. Vulnerability doesn't show up on a scorecard. And as men, we're not really taught how to be vulnerable. But if you want deep friendships, vulnerability is required. Now, on the busyness home front, I think there's probably truth to that. However, I would also say that friendships as adults are inefficient, and we protect and we optimize towards efficiency. And what I mean by that is it takes time. Like, it takes a lot of time to build meaningful friendships. It takes vulnerability, and it requires showing up time and time and time again when it feels like maybe you're not getting the benefit from it. So I think those two things are really important. On another note, but similar, a parallel line, I was at a men's retreat last week, and the conversation came up on what about the correlation between success and isolation. I think there's truth to that. And I don't know about your high school experience. In my high school experience, I played 4 sports. I was involved in literally every extracurricular thing you could imagine, all the clubs. I went to a small school, so you kind of had to. And from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m, I was with my friends all day. And so our high school experience, or probably our college experience, friendship was easy because of your proximity. It is hard now. It is not the same. You show up to work, they're coworkers. They may not have similar interests and passions, and they may not be friends, but that's who you spend a lot of time with. So I'll go back to it's inefficient to have friendships as an adult. And we didn't maybe choose to be isolated as a result of success, but I firmly believe, and I think this is maybe a little bit controversial, but we also choose to stay isolated, because once we get towards this level of success, we didn't choose that isolation. You just outgrow, and your friendships, you mature out of them. Now it's your responsibility to go find new friendships, new circles. And that might mean you have to invest in it. You might have to invest to go where the people are that you want to be around. Sometimes the hard truth is that might be an investment. So success does probably lead to isolation. You mature out of friendships, but it's your choice to stay isolated. You have to be intentional to move into other circles. That's kind of my take that I brought up last week at the men's retreat. I got a lot of interesting looks from it. But I think when we sit with that statement, we'll probably realize that there's a lot of truth to it.
I think that it is true. And I think that, it takes stepping out of the box that we feel safe in. I remember one day I was in Berkeley, California. I had been changing schools. I was in graduate school. And suddenly, I went to this park to meet up with some friends, and I went to the wrong side of the park. And I walked in to the middle of a LARPing, live action role play. And I was sitting there and I was like, what are these nerds doing? And then suddenly I was in there and I was like, hold up, man.
But they're having so much fun, though.
This is rad. These guys are having a blast. And I was like, dude, can I pick up one of the foam swords? They're like, you're welcome to, man. And I was just like, and then 30 minutes later, I was deep into LARPing with these people. And my friends are waiting over there. They called me. They're like, Sean, where are you? And I was like, I'm going to be late because I've got something awesome going on. And these people were sitting there. But it took me stepping outside of what I thought was normal and what I thought was safe. And I had to go and be willing to
take a risk.
Take a risk and try something new, man. And I think that's one of the hardest parts for people because, you can you can see something. It's like you're feeling lost, and in the distance, you see a campfire. You know, a fire's been lit, but you have to be willing to sit there and go, you know what? So many of us, we see that fire and we go, you know what? That's going to take me being vulnerable. That's going to be me
Hmm.
talking about the fears I have, talking about the insecurities I have, talking about the challenges I have. And I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
So we turn away, and then we get more insecurities, we get more challenges, we get more fear. Instead of saying, and like you had said that like your trips can wake men up, but like the brotherhood keeps the fire lit. What actually changes when
Hmm.
people get into that community and join that fire, man?
Yeah. I think as men, when we come back home from these these experiences, these trips, is we no longer live life isolated in our own heads. I think that's the biggest thing. So we come home with shared language. We come home and we've dropped some of the weight we've been carrying, and you come home with a whole bunch of guys who see you, they get you, they understand, and you can pick up the phone and call, any time of day. I think that's the biggest thing is they show up with this sense of, I don't have to do life on my own. I don't have to live alone in my head anymore with my thoughts. Become activated, and it's the guy's responsibility to come home and have that ripple effect continue. I mean, they have an active role to play, in this type of an experience once they leave the fire. In the terms of being on a trip. And so I think the biggest thing is they usually come in feeling a bit isolated, and they come home putting weight down, and they no longer feel that isolation, especially in your head. And that's the start of that kind of transformation.
I love that. And I think that one of the things too when you I it's interesting. I talked to a lot of the guys that have been in the military. I was not. And it's one of the things that I wish that I had have had that experience. The closest thing
I
I
do
had
too.
is I was in team sports. I did a lot of great team sports. I was in martial arts, and the guys from my dojo are like still the closest guys that I like, my closest community of male friends, And one of the things that when you face something together, when you have this shared experience, it gives you
Hmm.
this sense of meaning, and it's like, I think that, and you can get context from another person, and like, I know that when I went through one of the things that was, I did my MBA during the COVID times because there was nothing to do. We were dealing with lockdowns, and I was just like, well, I don't know what to do right now. So I was like, well, I'm going to go online and get an MBA. And I got a great scholarship. So I did it. Program taught me hardly anything. I'm not going to lie. It wasn't a Wharton MBA or something, but you know what was awesome? There was a couple concepts I got out of it, but what was awesome was I got to meet some really cool people that I would have never. One of the people um, in my like final graduation project she's a VP at Fidelity, like a big bank. I have no
Hmm.
way, and there's no way in the world that I have access to that group in normal conditions. But she was such a leader, such a powerful like woman that was just like, she was like just so awesome, and like her direct approach. And we had one team member that was just slacking, and I was like always confrontational, but it was so awesome to see how she laid it down. And she was like,
Hmm.
this is how it's gonna be. And she was just like, it was not confrontational, it was just like boom, boom, boom. And I was just like,
Yeah.
wow, wow. So that's what that looks like.
Hmm.
And then I was able to grow and evolve by being around this, and it's like,
Yeah.
but one of the things that I find too is when I was younger, my parents got me into, it wasn't the Boy Scouts, but it was like Boy Scout equivalent. It was something that my church group had, and we had this group. And I
Hmm.
remember we would go on these trips to cool places. And the coolest thing that I remember is that these obstacle courses, they put together these obstacle courses that were just like, hello. Oh yeah, I wish that I could find obstacle courses like this, for adults, because it was like ridiculously cool. But one of the things that I notice is that physical challenge and physical play is still so important for people. And we get to this place of like, I'm 47, but like I still am going, I bang with guys that are like 26, 20, 35, and we're sparring, we're mixing it up. I ask them to take it a little easier on me because when I get the aches last a bit longer now than they used to. But one of the things is like that emotional release from doing those tough things is powerful, and it plays into this emotional honesty. Like you talk about this a lot, like, but what role does physical challenge play into this emotional honesty for men? And like, why do you think movement and discomfort and effort opens up doors that talking alone doesn't do?
Yeah. The body doesn't lie. I think we're built for movement. If you were not in Southeast Asia right now and I was not in Grand Forks, North Dakota, if we were in the same area, I'd say, Sean, like, let's go get a walk. Let's go get a hike. Let's get a ruck. Let's get a workout. Like, let's move. Men are built for shoulder to shoulder type of stuff, not sitting at a table across from each other and having a conversation. We get there eventually, but we start with movement. And I think physical challenge, especially for men, physical challenge creates this level of like shared honesty without having to force words. Most men, I don't think, need more talking. And again, I'm an introvert, so I'm kind of careful not to speak on behalf of everyone. Some people like that, but I don't think men need more talking. I think we need the conditions where truth feels safe to come to the surface. And I've just found, like, for men, that comes through physical movement. I don't, my events, my trips aren't along this vein of like massive physical suffering. I think there's some of those experiences out there, but we introduce cold water. We introduce movement, early morning movement, especially. And I've just found that really lands with guys. I think that you get movement in first, then you get vulnerability, and then that leads to great conversations.
Yeah. When I was playing volleyball in high school, we'd get up for 5 a.m. practices. And those 5 a.m. practices were like, where was that, man? That's where you got the momentum. That's where you got we would show up. It sucked, but that was part of the whole embrace the suck, get in there and do it. And then when you leave, you feel great when you leave, and it's like, that's one of the things, like, I'll have had a long day at work. I'll be sitting there going, not today, man. I'm not going to walk into Muay Thai tonight, but I take my daughter and then I get in there and I run for 5 minutes and I'm like starting to feel it. Then I go hit the heavy bag. And when I'm done, I'm like, maybe I don't have to go heavy and hard every time, but just getting in there, it makes a difference, and like, that's what I have to remember is like, you get in and you start. And I do believe we're made to be moving. I mean, you think about it. There was this one video I saw on Instagram, and I don't know what martial arts school this was, but God damn, they're doing it right. They were teaching these kids to march in a phalanx, and they gave these kids shields, and they gave another group of kids shields, and they had spears, like foam stuff, pointing through, and they're creating a shield wall. And I was like, dude, where were these people when I was a kid, man? Like, that's awesome, And it's like, dude, if you could run an adult men's camp, like, if I won the lottery, I'm not saying I'd make changes, but there would be signs. And one of them, it would be Roman Legion camp for adults. I don't care who you are, man or woman, come on out. But we're going to learn to march in phalanx. We're going to be having a shield. We're going to be learning to form a shield wall. And we're going to have a blast doing it, And like giant obstacle courses, learning shield wall type stuff. And then like at the end, we're going to have a full on Nerf battle with like Nerf shields and stuff. And dude. I mean, and like, I say that, and I'm guaranteeing there are people listening right now that are like, I saw a post earlier today and they were like, it was this great post on Instagram. And it was like, which would you prefer, a date with Sydney Sweeney or to cross the Rubicon with this, this emperor as Rome took over this, and I was like, and I know there's a bunch of guys going, but simply the fact that people are considering it, going like, dude,
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, crossing the Rubicon, you know?
I mean, we just took our son to Legoland. You'll be familiar with that if you're from LA.
Yep.
And we stayed at the Castle Hotel, on property there. And my son, we get him $20. He said, get whatever you want. And he wanted to get the foam sword. And so everything you're talking about, like I've got a window into this through the life of an 8-9-year-old boy. And we're kind of, you and I'll be 46 this year. You're 47. A lot of people listening are like, man, just to have that innocence of the youth and see how the youth wants to live through having a foam sword and like, having these little sword battles and Nerf gun wars. And we get the glimpse of that. We're like, kind of funny, kind of cute. I also kind of want that too, And so I think we all have that inside of us that we've just learned to like push down and maybe crowd out and just ignore. But man, it's inside us, that playfulness, that curiosity, that wonder, just to be a kid again.
I agree, man. And I think that that's something that we have to get back to is that experience of like in the Japanese Buddhism, like the Zen Buddhism, they call it beginner's mind. It's like where you start shedding everything that you've been taught, and you go back to that original blueprint, and we get into this trap because there are the things that trap us, money, success, responsibility, often trap us in this provider mode, and it's really hard when you're sitting there and like, even for me, like I have so much on my plate. I got to think about my team. I got to think about my wife. I got to think about my daughter. I got to think about how I'm going to afford college. So finding time to just like play, it's tough, but how do you help men redefine the whole game, but also what providing really means?
I think we can take the word provider and providing, and we can expand on that concept. Most people are thinking about providing, paying the bills, providing for the lifestyle that we want to have. But man, it's so much bigger than that. It's about providing, presence. It's about emotional, I think, steadiness. And for a lot of guys, I try to help reframe and say, what about providing things for your family, in addition to safety and all those things? Not just resources, but what about providing things like fun? What about providing things like adventure? All these things that we were just talking about, Sean, curiosity, playfulness. What about providing spontaneity? I had a guy in one of my trips. He refers to himself as the CFO of his family, and he's referring to a chief fun officer. And I think just helping guys understand like your role to provide is so much. Don't limit it just to financial and resources. Think about how you can show up for your family as someone who's the CFO, the chief fund officer. And that's a different reframe for guys. They're not used to that, but that's more of an expansive approach, and it's a different kind of strength. But I like it, man. Like I refer to myself too as the chief fund officer in my family.
I love that. And I think that if you're not doing it, like if you're not setting the tone for your family and your life, someone else or something else will. And I think that, it's about being there. And like, for me, it was like realizing that being there and being healthy was probably one of the biggest and most important gifts I could give my family. Because at the end of the day, if I'm not like there and able to show up for them, what else am I going to be doing? And what's one pattern you see men fall back into when they don't have accountability or brotherhood after the breakthrough?
They'll say things like, this was really powerful, and they'll have a great experience. And then they'll go back home and they'll fall into the same pattern because it's easy. And I refer to that as they intellectualize the whole process. They get it in their head, but it never gets down to their heart. So without that level of like staying close to the fire in between trips or after the trip or whatever it is, you need to have that brotherhood. You need to have the accountability. You need to work on those things because, otherwise old habits will just kind of push back. And before you know it, you're back into those old habits. Breakthroughs, I don't really stick unless there's some sort of level of structure and accountability and commitment. So that's what I see. I'd say guys intellectualize it a lot.
I completely agree. For someone listening tonight who like sits there and goes, you know what, I want to make a change. What do you think they can do? What's the best thing that they can do right now?
One of the things that I found helpful to me is to sit down, pen and paper, and write out success looks like, to me, it looks like what? Because I think if we don't define, and this came up in some of our conversation already, Sean, but if we don't define success on our own terms, society will do it for us. And then we'll start moving towards that. And then we'll realize, like, shoot, this is empty. Like, this isn't fulfilling. This is lonely. So I think step number one is just to sit down and say, success to me looks like, and become more of the author of your life as opposed to just someone who's a passenger in it. And then I think, you know, if you're a guy who's listening, be intentional with who you spend your time with and how you spend that time. And to the conversations earlier, is being vulnerable. It's probably going to look like going first in that, because it's not been modeled to us on how to have these male friendships. But I think those are probably the two biggest important steps. You know, as we wrap this conversation up, since we're similar in age, you remember the movies Back to the Future.
Right.
And you've got Marty McFly in one of those where if you remember, he's looking at this picture. And in the picture, he sees himself in it along with some others. But that as he looks at that picture, he sees himself fading out. Do you remember that part? Like, he's fading out in the picture.
Yep.
That's what I see happening with guys, because they just get so focused on this level of success and what it looks like. And in that whole process, they're losing themselves.
Yep.
And they don't choose to do it, but it just happens, you know, one practical decision at a time. Like, it's reasonable to make these decisions, but before you know it, man, like, we're pushed into the background. We're barely there, and we're just not living life with purpose and intent and curiosity and a sense of wonder and adventure. And that's what makes us fully alive. So, guys, bring yourself back into the forefront of that picture, and that picture is your life. Don't keep choosing to go to the background. So that's my encouragement.
Well, where can people find out more about you and what you do?
I'm on LinkedIn a lot. That's how you and I connected. I enjoy that platform. You can find me there. If you want to see the different events and things that we have coming up, the website's the best. It's just guystrip.co. It's not guystrip.com. Someone owns that domain and they're trying to sell it for 10 grand. I'm like, man, it's not worth 10 grand to me. So don't do .com, do .co. I'm on Instagram too, myself personally, and then the brand's on there as well. But I'd say I probably hang out the most on LinkedIn. And if people want to connect there, I love it, man. Like I said, that's how you and I connected. I've connected with so many great people on LinkedIn. I just really enjoy that platform right now.